Welcome, guys. It's been a while. We've got the Cutup coming back into play. What's going on, Steve? Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to be back. It was a short window from the Super Bowl till now, but it feels like so long going from having football every weekend to then just like that hiatus. So it's fun to, have that be back and to be able to be really relevant again.
Yeah, we have a new Super Bowl champion. We've had some free agency and trades and all sorts of stuff that have happened that are going to impact the league. So many coaching changes as well. I think this year is going to be one of the most wild years that I think is going to happen, just because there's so many offensive coordinator changes and coaching changes. Seemingly big name players are switching teams. There's quarterbacks that are switching teams all over the place too. And I just feel like when you have that much chaos, there's a lot of nuance to what actually is going to transpire on the field. And there might be teams that look terrible at first, but then, after a couple of weeks, they look really good, and we may overreact after week 1 or 2. I just think that there's a lot of impacts that are happening right now, but really excited to go through the free agency and recent acquisitions with you. Especially, there's been some big trades. There's been a lot of big free agency moves that all the teams have done. And what's interesting about this is that you and I haven't even really talked about all the different players and what we think. So our takes are going to be fresh, and they might not be the exact same, which is awesome.
I think I totally agree with you on the coaching change stuff. And even coming off of a season where it felt like a weird changing of the guard in the sense that like Mahomes wasn't in the playoffs. Josh Allen went out of the playoffs somewhat earlier. It's not like the Seahawks are in this and here's the start of a dynasty that you had with like the Chiefs and even the Eagles winning the Super Bowl. It just feels like we're truly kind of walking into this upcoming offseason and upcoming season at like kind of a clean, even slate where it's like, defense won it this year, which always I feel like throws it off when it's not like an elite offense that takes home the Super Bowl. It always kind of feels like it leaves the league in flux of like, are we about to see a shift towards more dominant defenses, or how has that changed the complexion of the league in the sense of like how defenses change? Or was this just an anomaly that, Mike Macdonald's a really good defensive coach and the Seahawks had a bunch of really, really good players in really good positions. So I'm excited to talk about this. And it really does just feel like we're in a very fun off season in the sense of how this all translates to the 2026 season coming up.
And we're going to start and just go team by team and talk about their more like offensive weapons and acquisitions. If there's like major offensive line changes, we'll go through that too, and how that impacts the team. So we'll start with the Cardinals. A couple of things that have happened with the Cardinals. One, Kyler Murray was released, which seemingly means that Jacoby Brissett will probably be the starting quarterback to start the season. We'll see if they do anything in terms of the draft or anything else in terms of trade. But for now, it looks like it's Jacoby Brissett. And then we also have the addition of Tyler Allgeier. So 2 big moves. Let's talk about Allgeier first and how he fits. I'm curious your take on Allgeier and the signing that they made here and how you think he may fit with the team.
I like it if they are not going to be reliant on him to be the number 1 guy, which I don't think they will. I'm pretty sure they still have James Conner. I always kind of question myself as I commit to saying who's on each team right now, just because there is so much movement. But with James, they have James.
I believe they did do either an extension or reconstruction of James Conner's contract. So he's still on the team. He's making less than Allgeier. I think it's like $3 million or something like that.
Yeah, and so with the Allgeier signing, I like him as a change of pace back. I think what's interesting is that, they have a coaching change. They have Mike LaFleur coming in, and LaFleur comes in from LA where they really did a lot of different things with their run game. They kind of evolved over the course of the last like 3-4 years and what they have prioritized in the run game. And, having been, especially with McVay, having been like a really highly primary outside zone guy to now the current iteration of the Rams is that they operate in they do a lot more man concept stuff. But I think that with LaFleur having, worked with that outside zone a little bit, I think that helps Allgeier because this guy, all he did was run outside zone. Like in Atlanta, that was like his bread and butter. and his Atlanta's bread and butter in general was just outside zone. And so I think like LaFleur having such a good grasp of zone concepts, I think this could be a really good fit for Allgeier, because what he's really good at is just being downhill, let him kind of strafe the line, find the hole, and then just become a muscle hamster through the hole and just kind of bull his way through. So I think it's a good back to take weight off of James Conner as he gets older. And, he's coming off an injury. You're not going to be able to get the amount of touches that I think they got out of him 3 years ago. So I think Allgeier's a good change of pace that comes into a system with an offensive coordinator that understands a lot of different run concepts. So he's going to be able to set up Allgeier to be successful with probably using him in an outside zone style offense, or using outside zone a little bit more often when Allgeier gets on the field.
Yeah. So last year, Allgeier he had kind of a down year, in my opinion. He was less efficient in pretty much all aspects of the game. His success rate dropped by like 10 percentage points. His yards before contact, everything was basically down last year comparative to the year before, 2024. Part of me wonders if he can find that gear again, if there's something to like just how they were playing or what have you that just didn't fit him well in Atlanta, or if he was dealing with injuries or something like that. Because prior to last year, I thought Allgeier was a really, really strong, like, first and second down running back. So part of me, and his deal that he got kind of reflects like kind of the mix of, hey, he was good, he didn't have a great season last year, and getting like $6 or $6.5 million kind of puts you in that range of where the team is committing to you. They think that you have some talent, but you're not necessarily like guaranteed a starting role by any means.
Right.
To me, I think they've kind of hedged in so many different ways, because they still have James Conner, which he's coming off an injury, a major injury, and that like has risks in itself, being like 31 years old. And then they still have Trey Benson, who's shown some flashes, but the dude has like very few carries in his career. He's shown some explosive traits, and like his combine metrics and all the stuff he did in college look great, but like, yeah, how many games have you actually done it in the NFL? From my perspective, I think that Allgeier has, like, this is just going to be a competition, and the one guarantee is that Allgeier is going to be on the roster because they paid him a lot more money than the other guys.
Yeah.
And like, you can cut James Conner. I doubt they would, but you could, because he's just on a 1-year deal now based off the restructure that they did. So I think Allgeier has an opportunity to, like, if he's able to show the burst that he had previous to last year, I think he has an opportunity to own the backfield, like first and second down, maybe like the first 2 drives, and then they split it with James Conner in the third drive. And then James Conner probably gets some pass down stuff because he's shown really well in pass protection and like can catch out of the backfield and stuff too.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like a reliable player. And so that's kind of where I see things fitting. The weird thing is that James Conner's also good at some of the things that like Allgeier's good at, which is short yardage stuff. And like you were talking about, being the muscle hamster, which, haven't heard that term since Doug Martin was playing, but I do think that James Conner can kind of do the same stuff in that regard. But then he also has the profile of being able to catch the ball and like pass protect and do all that kind of stuff too. So it's kind of a weird fit. But that doesn't, to me, it means that like there's an opening, there's an opportunity. They gave him a meaningful amount of money, not guaranteed starter money, but a meaningful amount. And so I'm willing to kind of just sit here and say, like, if people are just saying like, hey, Allgeier's just going to be a backup, like I'm open to the idea that he could become the starter, or he is the starter from week 1 on, and has the potential to increase his carry share over time as well.
Yeah.
Moving on from him, now we have pretty much guaranteed that Jacoby Brissett is going to be the starting quarterback for the Cardinals for 2026. What are your thoughts there? We saw it kind of like at the end of the season last year, and like they turned into this crazy like passing team, but now with coaching changes and everything, and their defense was like one of the worst at the time as well, with a bunch of injuries. Like, with all those changes, do we feel that this is a good thing for all the other players, a bad thing, like just neutral? People are probably expecting Michael Wilson and Marvin Harrison and Trey McBride to have like these crazy numbers that they're putting up at the end of the season. And I don't think that's the real story.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jacoby Brissett's a good bridge quarterback, which is what he's here to be and what the Cardinals are clearly committing to. Not really, other than Mendoza, there's not really a ton of quarterback prospects that like jump out as like bona fide first round guys. So I think that this is really just like us signifying that, like, yeah, they understand where they're at as a team. New coach, turning over the roster a little bit, like they've got him. They're in it for a rebuild a little bit. And I think really for Brissett, like that, a lot of that passing volume just came from being down all the time, having to come back from being down multiple, like 2+ scores every time they got the ball in the second half, basically. So like, I think the volume changes next year, just in the sense that like, I don't know if they'll be in those situations as much, but I think like this, like with the Michael Wilson stuff, having Marvin Harrison be there consistently healthy will probably change that up for him a little bit. This is just an offense that they're just turning over the guard, and it's, basically just admitting to the faults that they made. And like, you have a bona fide star in McBride. You've got hopefully a dude in Marvin Harrison Jr. I think it's not, I wouldn't necessarily call it up in the air, but like, it'll be interesting to see how he comes off of what was for sure a down year. And then on the flip side, Michael Wilson, it'll be interesting to see like where, if he continues to climb, or if that was just, like you said, kind of a product of just being in a bad team that got to throw it a lot because they were losing pretty consistently.
It's somewhat of, it's a medium thing. It's not like a good thing or a bad thing. It's, hey, there's familiarity. While there's a big coaching change, there's familiarity with this quarterback. We've seen something with him and some of the players that have happened already. So it's not going to, like, I don't think it's like a week one, hey, all of these players are going to have like bad weeks immediately. Is the offense going to be scoring like 30 plus points consistently or playing hurry up mode? No. But I think that I'm looking at ADPs for like best ball drafts right now. And I already thought McBride was going a little too high anyway, but like, I wouldn't change where I'm drafting McBride based off the fact that like Jacoby Brissett's going to be the quarterback. I think most people somewhat kind of assumed it anyway. And then like Marvin Harrison and Michael Wilson, I wouldn't really change much about them either. I'm not that into Marvin Harrison at the moment, but mainly because like I just think there's like a little bit of a prove it thing, and how long of a leash do you get by having like such a strong like recruiting profile and then like college production and all of that. I'm taking more of like I need to see something before I like draft him in like the 5th round of a fantasy draft right now. Where there's other dudes that I think are like, pretty darn good in the same kind of space where I'm like Marvin Harrison and Parker Washington are going like 12 picks apart. And I've seen Parker Washington in this exact offense do a lot of stuff. And that might be like a super hot take, but I think Parker Washington's better for fantasy at the moment because
and just especially because with LaFleur coming in, this offense is going to change a decent amount from what it was. Like, I even think that you might see McBride's numbers kind of fluctuate a little bit more. Like, he'll still be there, but like, I don't know if he's going to garner the target share that he got last year. And you could see them go a little bit heavier, try to utilize more tight ends. Obviously, we know LaFleur coming from the Rams, they loved that 12-13 personnel a lot more than what Arizona was using. And so like, will they shift and acquire more big, like more athletic, bigger tight ends to kind of use that in their offense to go more 1-2 wide receiver sets, and how that affects the distribution? But really, it's going to be a struggling offense. Their offensive line still isn't great. Jacoby Brissett is who he is. He's a great stabilizing presence, I think, for the locker room. And I think just for a team to have as like, what you're going to get, he's going to like show up, do his job and get people where they need to be, but he's not going to like over exceed. But it allows you to start gathering talent around a quarterback that can at least, kind of keep the pace and keep you on par.
All right, we'll move on to the Falcons. There wasn't any major acquisitions other than Tua, which I think is still a major acquisition, but just saying like there wasn't a running back or receiver or anything that's switching teams that's going to have a
Right.
significant like fantasy impact or something like that.
Right.
I'm not talking about Olomide Zaccheaus again. Yeah.
Those are really their two offensive acquisitions.
Yeah. I'm curious what your take is. Do you think he has a chance at starting and like playing from the onset, or yeah, what do you think he brings
for Tua?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think absolutely. I mean, they're like he obviously is coming off of a terrible year. That Miami team, that Miami offense just looked stunted completely once Tyreek Hill went down, and then they had other injuries. At one point, Tua was just throwing to like a band of misfits for a while when Jalen Waddle would get hurt. But I still think he's a viable NFL quarterback. And what's I think another interesting layer is that like with Michael Penix having been the starter in Atlanta last year with Kirk Cousins coming in a little bit, but like overall that team knows how to work with a left-handed quarterback, so that's something that kind of like plays into his favor, that like there's not going to be this huge shift in how guys are operating. I think that like just the inherent seeing a left-handed quarterback, if you're a team that has never played, like guys or team that hasn't played with a left-handed quarterback, there's just some quirks there that can kind of mess with your
I was thinking about the same thing. I was like, well, your offense doesn't have to reorient based off of a lefty QB. Like,
right.
It's kind of underrated how much that matters, because you think about like the blindside protection. Okay, now it's a right tackle. Then you think about like rollouts and different things like that, and things just flow the opposite way.
Right.
And that makes you have to change like directions of where you're running and cutting and all sorts of different stuff. And it is, to me, it's a bigger deal than people like give credit for. So
right.
I thought it was like a really good match, because one, I do think that Tua would win. I think that Tua is going to win this job from the onset. Two, if he doesn't, like there's just problems and all sorts of different stuff. Like you're just trading out basically like similar styles of offense that you can run with the two quarterbacks. I don't believe in Penix. I don't think I've seen much from him that like tells me, hey, I need this quarterback to be like that this guy's going to be some sort of stud or anything. And maybe it's a hot take that I think Tua is going to be like the starter from the beginning of the season, because I'm looking at like ADPs and stuff. And it looks like Penix has been being drafted like earlier, but also, there hasn't been enough time for people to react to this. And I don't know what the messaging is from the team, but the team probably like wants to have like a quarterback competition. And I just think Tua is a better quarterback.
Yeah.
So
honestly, I think it gives Tua the opportunity to reset, go to a different team, get away from, everything that was happening in Miami between the head injuries and, everything going on with the offense and the rift with Mike McDaniel. I just think there was a lot of noise around him that like now he gets to go to a new spot where it is an open competition. They have a really solid offense in Atlanta. I mean, it's not like he's going to shipwreck. Like he's got weapons. He's got a solid offensive line. He's got a great weapon at running back. Now it'll just be kind of a change of, offensive scheme, but I think it gives him an opportunity to kind of reset and kind of just prove himself again. I've never been super high on Tua. I think that he has his limiting factors, but I think the big thing is that if you can get an offense that operates well around him, that gives him a good amount of weapons, that knows how to work with him, you can get productivity and like you can get a good offense out of him. I think that's what he can bring to Atlanta. And then for Atlanta, it's a win-win because, you're getting a guy who got that big second contract. So like he's shown the flashes, but you also have a contingency plan in that, like, if that goes awry, you still have Michael Penix Jr. behind him that you can throw back in and, maybe he shows a little bit more of something. And then with both of them, you can off-ramp off of both these quarterbacks pretty easily if they get to the point where they're like, neither of these are working out, and it doesn't like totally ruin the team financially. It allows them to potentially try going down the road of like what the Colts have done in the past few years, or other teams where it's like we have the offensive structure, we're just going to kind of throw a quarterback at the team for a couple of years and see if we can get one to stick. And I think that this is kind of like that for first and second iteration. They did it with Kirk Cousins. Now they're doing it with Tua. They've had Michael Penix in behind it. I think like the upside is really high, but like I think the floor of this signing, it doesn't change the floor of the team at all.
Yeah, I think that Stefanski had Kirk Cousins in Minnesota. And to me, this is it's not the exact same. It's probably a little notch below. Like I thought Cousins was like at the level that he was at when he was on the Vikings when Stefanski was there. But I think that he can offer some sort of like stabilizing presence to the offense that like Penix would have just more high variance.
Yeah.
I think Drake London could have a big season. We've seen Tua kind of line it up for wide receiver ones multiple times. I think Stefanski can run a really good scheme around with the weapons that he has. I think he could run a really strong scheme with Tua at quarterback and really like line up a bunch of targets for Drake London. Bijan's going basically a number 1 pick in the draft, 1 or 2 in most situations with Gibbs. Like, I think that's that's respectable. It makes a ton of sense. He's going to have like pretty much all the work in the backfield. He has LT like traits where he's a good receiver out of the backfield and all that kind of stuff too. So that makes sense. Pitts is the one to me that I'm just like, are we going to do this again? And now his cost is like a top 100 pick. And I know he looked good in flashes last year, especially down the stretch. I'm just not sure about it and the fit within the Stefanski offense. We've seen other tight ends do well. Those tight ends have been a little bit more of inline blocking, like ones that could offer you something inline in the past, like Njoku.
Yeah.
I think that's always like the $1 million question for a lot of people.
So that is one where like, I think now, Grant, I agree that I think Pitts's ADP is probably a little high right now, but I think if Tua stays the starter, I think that probably pushes the ceiling for Bijan being kind of like that pushed for, because I like everybody else is like between Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs of like who should be like the 1-0-1. I think that if Tua becomes the starter, I think this pushes Bijan to a bona fide 1-0-1 for me, purely just because of the way we saw Tua work with Ashan. We've seen Stefanski have to get work out of his running backs in years in Cleveland where their receiving talent was less than stellar, to say the least. And for Pitts, kind of similarly, I think that Stefanski having worked with Fannin last year is kind of an interesting development for Pitts, because I think that like that kind of directly projects, and then that combined with Tua's always kind of been a tight end searcher, whether it was Darren Waller last year. He's always had kind of a tight end that he's worked into the offense pretty consistently. So I think it definitely like is this like Tua's a ceiling raiser for both Bijan and Pitts in my mind. But but like Pitts, the variance is going to be like super high. But at least again, I think Pitts, having worked with a left-handed quarterback with Penix and had played pretty well with Penix, and yeah, just the versatility that Stefanski showed to use Fannin in, I think it all kind of projects well for Pitts in this offense and projects well with Tua too.
I consider an upgrade for Pitts. I just don't know if I like the price right now, and that's kind of where I've landed. I feel like I still need to think about it a little bit, but I'm largely out on tight ends at around that level, just because, not meaning like if I were doing a portfolio based approach, I'm still going to take him some because I know he has like tremendous upside.
Yeah.
I just don't want to be like consistently clicking Kyle Pitts 90 to 100 range right now, even though I think this is like a solid move for him.
Yeah.
Let's go on to the Ravens. So there's not many like actual signings that have happened. There's more so departures. And so I was just thinking about like the consequences of those. So they lost Kolar, they lost Isaiah Likely, and then they lost Keaton Mitchell and Linderbaum. But I kind of we'll talk about the offensive line maybe a little bit as we talk about these players. Those moves to me, have pretty strong impacts on what I think Mark Andrews could offer. And then maybe if you're thinking about backup running back a little bit, like who is it for the Ravens? Let's talk about Mark Andrews and spend most of our time there. We can spend like 2 seconds on backup running back.
Yeah, the big thing is that I think this signifies just a change in offensive mentality for what this team will be, which is, I mean, obviously new coach coming in. They had been in the same system for a long time. And I think that like losing Ricard, losing Kohler, losing Isaiah Likely, I think you're going to see that movement overall away from being that super, super heavy set offense and potentially into more of a more athletic offense. I think it plays to Mark Andrews' strength. I think being able to get into a little bit more of a speedy offense that creates more space and spreads out the defense a little bit more in general, I think that plays to Mark Andrews' strength. I mean, he's consistently been one of the best separators as a tight end. And, you know, he's had his ups and downs with catching the ball, but overall he has not regressed much in separation overall. So I think that allowing him to operate in more space and having this offense move towards what looks to be the more athletic offense, I think that plays to his strengths a lot, and will also probably work the athleticism of Lamar Jackson a little bit more, or at least stress that a little bit more. I think that kind of seems like what they're signifying with like letting all these guys go, is that like we clearly reached the pinnacle of what that offense could have been. It didn't get us where we needed to be. They turn over the regime, they kind of turn over the offense, and like let's change the complexion of what this offense looks like a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be a full-time player. They don't really have many other options right now.
Yeah.
They could do something to add some talent there, maybe in the draft, 3rd, 4th round pick. I don't know.
I don't have numbers on a contract value. Not a huge game changer, but it is just another tight end in the room. Probably, again, definitely more of an inline tight end than what Mark Andrews is.
Yeah.
So I think like that's what that is. But yeah, this is really kind of throwing him on an island and saying like, we need you to be something, because you're not going to have the likely to, you know, kind of pick up the slack of target share 2 tight ends and things like that, you know, underneath and a little bit over the middle.
I think there's just fatigue in drafting Mark Andrews, especially how like over the past couple of years, I feel like people have been burned, right? He had tightrope surgery, I think, before 2024 or something like that. And he ended up scoring a bunch of touchdowns. A lot of his production came like in the back half of the year. I think like Zay Flowers or somebody got hurt, and that opened a window for him to do more. He also has had like some snap count, like weird stuff that has happened in the past too, where it's like, why is this guy not playing right now? I think the famous game against the Chiefs week 1, 2 years ago in 2024, like people remember and being like, oh, Likely had this crazy game.
Yep.
And Andrews like basically just didn't play very much. Now playing time isn't an issue. Like he's going to be on the field a lot. He's going to run some routes, which is great. Great for fantasy production. The other thing is that like last year, there was a lot of Lamar Jackson missing. He's 4 years removed from his big season. And do I think he's going to get like the 1,200, 1,300 yards again? No. But like right now he's going in this range of tight ends where it's like 150 ADP. I kind of like some of these names, but not like I would not take Kenyon Sadiq above Mark Andrews right now. Like I think Sadiq is probably going to be like a slot tight end type of player, a big slot. And for me, like I just think that Andrews is kind of guaranteed some sort of like route share of like 70% plus, which is great for tight ends.
Yeah.
He's going to be in a good offense because it had Lamar Jackson. And if you think that Lamar Jackson is going to stay healthy, then it's a good reason to have Mark Andrews on your team, because he's probably going to do well if Lamar Jackson is playing.
Yeah.
I'm pretty in on Mark Andrews' current price at like 149 ADP. I'm sure it's moving up too because of all the transactions, but I'm pretty into it.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's move on to their backfield really quickly. So the backups to Derrick Henry right now are Justice Hill and Rasheen Ali. And I just don't know if you have any sort of opinion on each. I think Justice Hill is more of like the pass down, like, okay, we're in this game script. And then to me, Rasheen Ali is like the Derrick Henry goes down. He's probably going to be like picking up and carrying a lot more of the load, more so than Justice Hill.
Yeah, I think Rasheen Ali kind of flashing a little bit last year is what made them comfortable letting Keaton Mitchell walk. I mean, Keaton Mitchell had dealt with some injury stuff and inconsistencies here and there, but like it's still Derrick Henry's backfield. Justice Hill is, I think, very useful in that offense, but until then, like there's both such specific roles within the offense that don't encompass a lot. Like Rasheen Ali will just be kind of like, yeah, your pace changer of Derrick Henry needs a break because he's been on the field for a long time. And yeah, Justice Hill is a good target out of the backfield and works really well in the pass game, pretty much the extent of what he does and what he's there to do. That workload isn't huge. I think that with Rasheen Ali kind of showing a little something made them comfortable moving off of Keaton Mitchell. And really, it's still Derrick Henry's backfield until the wheels fall off.
I just think it's interesting because I know a lot of times people are thinking about handcuffs running backs and dynasty and stuff like that. If Derrick Henry just went down, I think Rasheen Ali is probably going to be the guy. They'd probably still be in the market to find somebody else too.
Right.
They could try to trade for somebody or whatever. So there's a lot of fragility to that. But at this current moment, Rasheen Ali seems like the first and second down running back handcuff.
Yeah, I would probably say that it'd be more likely that they'd be on the lookout to grab someone from, so whether it be a small trade or whatever, then it would be, I think it'd be more likely for that than it would be that all of a sudden Rasheen Ali is in a workload role.
The Bills made a big transaction right before free agency and right before my vacation. And I had some time to think about it, and we actually talked about this on one of our last podcasts that we did, where we talked about the Chicago Bears. And we mentioned that there was a possibility that DJ Moore would no longer be on the team. Yep. He got traded to the Bills. A lot of mixed reactions.
Yeah.
I'm curious your thoughts on how he fits in this offense, what he brings, if he can truly be their go-to wide receiver one, things like that.
I don't think he's a bona fide wide receiver one, but I think he is a great wide receiver for Josh Allen. I think that this is a really good trade, in my opinion, for the Bills. I think that DJ Moore is a very physical receiver. He separates well against man coverage. He can go up and make contested catches. And I think that those are the three traits that the Buffalo Bills completely lacked in any of their receivers. They didn't have a guy that could consistently separate on the outside. They didn't have a guy that could get big and make catches downfield. And they didn't have a guy that could win against man coverage. And that's what DJ Moore is. I think so much of who DJ Moore is has gotten distorted a little bit. I think with his first couple years in Chicago and the way they used him, kind of, and then last year being in an offense where it was just kind of a plethora of weapons, in the sense of they had Loveland, Cole Kmet's solid, Luther Burden came on towards the end of the year. You had Romeo Doubs in there, and then even DeAndre Swift out of the backfield. It was just kind of a lot of different guys, a lot of different archetypes. And the sheer fact that even amongst that, DJ Moore couldn't go and be that bona fide number one in a Ben Johnson offense, I think kind of shows that his ceiling has lowered from what he was, compared to where he was coming out of Carolina. But I think that walking into an offense with Josh Allen and on a team that is hurting for receiving weapons, he trends as a really good chance to get over 1,000 yards this year, and a really good chance to build a solid rapport with Josh Allen, who will push the ball down the field a little bit more, who's, needs someone over the middle. They need a guy that can win on those intermediate dig routes. Much of that Joe Brady offense is built on, we talked about it when we talked about the Bills, built on those crossing routes, mesh routes. That's a huge factor in that offense. And a big part of those mesh concepts is having that intermediate in route, that intermediate over route, things where you have a receiver that you can look to go win one-on-one across the middle and be available. And I think that's where he slides in right away. So I really think that this is a great trade for Buffalo because I think it gives Josh Allen a reliable target on the outside that I'm hoping with more of a target share and a quarterback that'll push it to him probably more consistently. I'd like to see him, go back to a little bit more of what he was in Carolina when there were more debates about like, is he like a true number one? I think that's I think that's definitely more of a possibility in Buffalo.
Yeah, the other thing that I was thinking through was like, not that I think Caleb Williams is on any sort of level with Josh Allen, but he has similar traits where he likes to extend plays and do things that are like kind of free flowing in the offense.
Yeah.
I think that will also lend itself to helping DJ Moore because Josh Allen will hold the ball for a long time. So you have more time to get open or time to do scramble drill and different things like that. So I think there's opportunity for him to do really well in that role. This actually came up when I was thinking about Marvin Harrison a little bit because I think DJ Moore is currently going around where Marvin Harrison goes in fantasy drafts. And I agree with you that this intermediate role, I think I pulled the numbers, his separation on intermediate routes is conservatively top 25% of all receivers last year. And I think like somewhat aggressively like top 15%. So it's somewhere between there.
Yeah.
Intermediate routes are so valuable for fantasy because they're more likely to happen than deep routes. And they always translate into bigger plays because you're basically getting a first down because it's 10 to 19 yards down the field. There's a lot of opportunity to break tackles. You're usually just one safety away from breaking a tackle and then going the distance. And DJ Moore has shown that he has some, yards after the catch ability as well. So I think it's a really good fit for what they want to do. His ADP is kind of in this range of Marvin Harrison and Courtland Sutton types of receivers. And Brian Thomas is kind of like right there too. I mean, I was thinking about this before my vacation, and I think that I would rather have him than all those guys. Like he did have a 1,300 yard receiving season. I'm not expecting that, but like I think he can be a 1,100 yard receiver this year. That doesn't mean that he's like a bona fide wide receiver one for a team, but he can mimic that role because one, there's literally nobody else. Two, he's good enough. Like I'd say he would be a good wide receiver two in an offense. And like, can he play the role of a wide receiver one when he needs to with an elite quarterback? Yes.
Yeah. And he doesn't have, there's not a lot of competition. And I mean, what he dealt with Caleb Williams is he dealt with one of the least accurate quarterbacks when it comes to catchable ball rates. That changes. Josh Allen's up there. He's a top 3 to 5 for sure in catchable ball rates. And he's not afraid to fit it into tight windows, which is like what DJ Moore is really good at. I think he is a big physical receiver that can win in like tight window situations. And that's not a situation that he was put in very often with Caleb Williams, because Caleb Williams does like not a huge tight window throw. And when it is, it's usually, it's kind of off and up and away, different things like that. Like getting into an offense with a more accurate quarterback, getting into an offense where a quarterback's not afraid to try to fit it into tight windows and fit it into like a contested catch situation, plays to DJ Moore's strengths where he can body up a corner and, duke it out a little bit more and get into those situations. And then also like his biggest competition is Khalil Shakir and Dalton Kincaid, who I think we could even talk about a little bit because they also re-signed Dawson Knox, which kind of is a representation of what they think of Dalton Kincaid. Whether that's good or bad is, to be seen, but it's just it shows that they don't trust him as an inline guy. They see him as a receiving weapon and not like a true tight end. Yeah. I think this free agency is like how much money these like non-receiving tight ends are getting. And I think it's like broached that topic really well I think within like the Twitter and football universe of like, what's the difference between a true tight end and a, F type slot, big slot tight end type guy.
It's what I keep thinking about with some of these like top rookie tight ends too, with like Sadiq and Stowers and stuff like that. I just keep thinking about like, are these guys going to play in line? And if they aren't, are they going to be on the field enough to matter for fantasy? Yeah. Like they might have some spike weeks because they're super athletic, but are they going to get like 600, 700 yards? Like, I don't know, because I think that they could be on the field for like only a 60% route share.
Right.
Sometimes you get drafted by a team like Hayden Hurst and then they barely use you, even though you're a first round pick. Like, who the heck knows? I agree with you on the Dalton Kincaid thing. I'm not like very interested in him in the fantasy world. He can certainly have some spike weeks just because if they're just in throw only mode and they're going after it, like he could be on the field a little bit more in some games. Can he catch touchdowns? Sure. I just don't think that he's a guy that I want to bet on because I don't think he's going to be on the field enough. Panthers, next team, they lost Rico Dowdle, and that's pretty much the big transaction, I think. How does that shake up the backfield? I'll give my opinion first. Actually, I'll go first this time. Chuba Hubbard's being drafted in like the 90 range right now. Checking 84. It went up quite a bit. I mean, that's one of the last like starting running back values that you have left. I've never actually been a huge Chuba fan, even though he had a great season 2 years ago. I thought it was a little bit of an anomaly. But at this price, like being a starting running back that you're getting in like a round 7 situation, I think it's a good value. I don't have much belief in Jonathan Brooks at the moment because, well, he's coming off of multiple big knee injuries.
Yeah.
And I think it's hard to come back from that.
Yeah.
He's been sitting like idly in the NFL for 2 years, basically. And that it's hard to show production after that. So I think this is basically Chuba's backfield. The team really, like everything I read about Canales is basically always trying to have something about Chuba being like the example of the team, etc. I don't think he's an incredible running back, but we know that opportunity is what drives running back production. I think right now it's at a good spot, and I think he will just be a solid value at the place that he's at right now. And if he ends up going above, let me think about names here. I think he should go above Jalen Warren right now because they signed Rico Dowdle. I think Ramondre is actually a good barometer because I still think that he's going to be involved.
Yeah.
David Montgomery, it's probably the right range around there. David Montgomery range, that's like 73. So yeah, I think like right now he's still a pretty good value by about a round or so.
Yeah, I think it just opens an opportunity for ETN or Jonathan Brooks to come in and fill that role of Rico Dowdle. I don't think they're not going to give Chuba like a true full-time workhorse back. So I think it's really like they have 2 young running backs. ETN they took in the 4th round last year. Jonathan Brooks they took in the 2nd round, 2024. So I think this is really just like we have like there's a report from Jeremy Fowler and different guys that like, hey, Jonathan Brooks is trending toward being able to contribute this season. His workouts have looked good from what the coaching staff has said. So it'll be interesting to see which between ETN and Brooks, if Brooks stays healthy or if ETN is able to prop himself up and become like that, change of pace back, then fill in the role of what Rico Dowdle did. But yeah, I like Chuba's he'll be a good like zero running back to kind of go after if you're like looking at redraft stuff. As like that's probably a good spot because he'll have consistent volume. He's not like not a ton of upside, but not like a cratering floor. He's just like he's got just a real nice tight range of outcomes that you can kind of rely on.
Yeah, I tend to agree there. Let's move on. So the Bears, nothing really to report other than the fallout. So the fallout from the DJ Moore trade, to me, I've been thinking through this a lot. I actually don't think Rome's role changes very much. I think he's like intermediate deep. More like if we were trying to compare it to what Ben Johnson did before.
Yeah.
So we talked about this before too. It's more of a Jameson Williams type of situation. And then the person that gets the biggest like assurance upgrade is obviously Luther Burden. We know that like his profile shows that he can be a yards after the catch guy. We know that he has even stronger ability than that. Like even last year, he showed the ability to like separate in man coverage. Not that man coverage is something that's run a bunch, but it's a good barometer of like who are guys that can actually like be difference makers in the NFL, right?
I think that also gets like somewhat overblown, like not overblown, but I think is like underrated. Like people will like pretty consistently kind of say that of like, oh, well, the people, they don't run man coverage a lot. A lot of zone turns into man coverage. So like winning against man coverage is obviously like it's crucial, but I've seen some people say like, oh, but it's not like as important. A lot of cover 3, a lot of cover 4 essentially turns into man type coverage. So like winning against man coverage is a huge indicator, and it usually translates into zone coverage. It just like somewhat changes just because of the way teams roll coverage and how like when you cut across the middle, things like that.
But I agree. I think he has tremendous upside. And the other thing is that I think his role can be weatherproof, situation proof. Like I think that he'll do more of the short, intermediate type of stuff. And that just means that like, hey, when there's the 25-mile-per-hour winds in Chicago, like he's gonna be able to be the guy that they're able to check down to and like say, hey, like make plays and stuff like that. So I'm pretty in on him, especially with Olamide Zaccheaus. I know I said I wouldn't mention him again, but he's gone.
Yeah. They bring in Khalif Raymond, who familiarity with Ben Johnson's scheme.
Yeah.
Never going to eat up a ton of like a big route share, but Ben Johnson has shown in the past that he does like him as like a field stretcher. But I really think like removing DJ Moore is really just like saying that he was just an extra that they didn't really like, that they didn't necessarily need anymore. I think it's like they want to concentrate more targets to Romeo Doubs, and they want to concentrate more targets to Luther Burden. Even Jade Walker kind of showing up and performing at times last year, like being able to integrate him more into the offense. I just think that like DJ Moore he was a surplus that you know they could get rid of, and they got value out of it. So like I think that it's more just like they're pushing all their chips in on those young guys that they've acquired the last couple of years. And I think it's like they want Rome to become that like bona fide number one, hopefully stay healthy, be the all areas of the field worker, and then, you know, but it really is just, I think it's just more of the Bears just saying like, hey, we've got a young core we want to commit to. We didn't need DJ Moore anymore because he was kind of a double up on traits that we have in other guys. And if anything, he's just kind of taking away the development. He's taking away in the sense that like he deserves targets, and now they can they funnel him out and they're able to get more targets too and help develop those young guys.
It was like they liked DJ Moore. It was a cap space and like asset move basically. Like, hey, do we need 3 of these? We can have 2 in Loveland, and we're gonna be just fine on offense. Kind of a group. Let's move on to the Bengals. The Bengals didn't make any moves, so we can run past them. We have the Cleveland Browns. Most of their additions are on the offensive line. We don't really know who's going to play quarterback for them. It could be Deshaun Watson. It could be Shador. Could be some random other guy that we don't know about right now. I don't want to spend too much time on this, so like very, very short. But it is nice that they're improving their offensive line. I'm going to spend 2 seconds on the one player that I really like from this team, and it's Harold Fannin for fantasy. He has basically 0 real target competition, and he's going in this like 78 range right now. When I think about tight ends that I think could just like blow up, I think about guys like a Harold Fannin who don't have much target competition. The offense is probably going to be bad, but we've seen bad offenses produce really strong tight end play because there's no other receivers on the field. And we saw some of his production down the stretch last year. Improving the offensive line also helps because that means that he doesn't have to stay in to block. And so that's kind of my perspective here. He had 731 yards last year and 6 touchdowns in a situation where like he was sharing the field with Njoku like for the first half of the season. And then he was playing with really terrible quarterback play. I think that there's just immense upside in his potential for this year. And a 78 ADP right now is like in my mind, like just a crazy cheat code. So
yeah. And Todd Bunkin's coming into town. He's, coming from Baltimore, which ran super heavy offenses. I think that like signing Zion Johnson, getting Elgin Jenkins in there makes their run game more viable than what it was last year. I know Quinshon Judkins just had a pretty bad injury, so we'll see if and when he returns next year. But, I think this makes the Cleveland Browns running backs a little bit more viable than they were before acquiring Zion Johnson, who was coming off like a good year. I mean, it may not look good because of what the Chargers were, but he was like one of the few guys that could actually hold his own in that Chargers offensive line. And then Jenkins has done well in Green Bay. So like, I think that makes the team, like, it just shores up the offensive line in what was a really bad offensive, like not really bad, but an offensive line that struggled at times, especially to keep Shore clean and struggled to create holes for running backs. So like Todd Monken coming in, those couple acquisitions on the offensive line, them probably going offensive line in the draft is like somewhat likely. I like it all kind of just pushes to like the upside of Fannin being there for sure. And their offense being a little bit more viable in the run game, depending on who shakes out to be their starting running back.
I think it'll probably be Dylan Sampson while they kind of like work in Kins.
Yeah.
Okay. The next team was supposed to be the Dallas Cowboys. They didn't really make any acquisitions. It's pretty much running it back. They re-signed Javonte Williams. I expect him to basically do everything for them from a running back perspective because they just have Jaden Blue and Phil Maffa. Those guys did well in week 18 last year. I'm only talking about the Cowboys more than other teams that didn't do anything because they're my favorite team. But they did well last year at the end of the season. So I think there's always some question, like, is this guy still going to get all the volume? The answer is yes. They really believe in Javonte Williams, so he's going to do pretty much everything for him. His ADP right now is in the 40s, 43.3. And I think that's just an incredible steal because this guy's going to get a lot of volume in a really good offense.
Yeah.
He looked pretty decent last year too. So I think this is just a strong buy for me right now. Moving on, we got the Broncos. The big move that they made was just bringing back J.K. Dobbins. I think all this really does is tell you how they feel about R.J. Harvey. They probably want to run something somewhat similar to what they did last year, where Harvey kind of does some pass downs, even though they have like a specialty pass down guy, but then they also have R.J. Harvey that does the pass downs, which is just, but that's kind of how they do it. And then Harvey gets the short yardage. J.K. Dobbins does a lot of like the between the 20s work. Maybe they switch up that like sometimes throughout the game too, where like R.J. Harvey gets a little bit of the between the 20s work too. But to me, it's like, I think people are projecting a bigger role for R.J. Harvey going into the season. But I'm not sure that that's what's going to happen. Like, I just think we're going to sit here being a little bit frustrated with how that role plays out because Dobbins looked good last year in his role, and I don't think R.J. Harvey looked that great down when he had his opportunities.
When he was forced into the main role, I don't know if they were ever planning on it, if they were always planning on bringing him back, but I think that R.J. Harvey's performance towards the end of the year probably solidified or at least like made them really push to get J.K. Dobbins back because R.J. Harvey showed some clear vision issues that J.K. Dobbins does not have. And that's where J.K. Dobbins is so valuable to this team is he has good vision. He hits the hole hard. He understands that that Sean Payton rush offense. He showed a lot of comfortability in it last year. I think this is kind of saying to everyone that like R.J. Harvey's not there yet. You know, what there is, I don't know. Like in the sense of like, did people want him to become a lead back? He's not there. He's not ready to be that. I don't know if he ever will be. If he's going to have to like shore up some of his like vision, some of his vision issues, but bringing back J.K. Dobbins just shows that like they believe in J.K. Dobbins and they didn't think that R.J. Harvey was in a position to like take over that load to where it was like bringing someone in underneath Harvey, whether it be a rookie or like a low level free agent running back. And it was that like they felt the need and the want to push towards Dobbins because they saw the value in him and they saw what would happen if they didn't have J.K. Dobbins, which was, you know, Bo Nix goes down and all of a sudden their run game is inept because they don't have a running back that can kind of create more than what's there, which is what J.K. Dobbins can do.
I think that because he had such a strong fantasy stretch, like kind of at the end of the season where he was taking up all of like the running back share essentially. Right. I think people want to like assign him some credit for that. And to me, like, I think a lot of running back fantasy production is just opportunity driven. He just had a lot of opportunities So he scored a lot of points. And they were an offense that scored a decent amount of points.
Yeah.
So I think if you transfer like that opportunity share back to kind of what we saw last year at the beginning, or maybe not exactly the beginning, but more so like the game before Dobbins got hurt or something. I don't expect anything too different from that. Like maybe he gets a little bit more opportunities, but we're still talking about a 3rd round running back. It's not like they spent a late 2nd round pick. It's not like they spent like a crazy amount of draft capital on him.
Yeah.
He's 25. He was an older running back. I'm not like sold that this needs to be more than what it is, which is, hey, he's a solid running back that can split a carry load with somebody else. And that's a fine role for him, but I don't want to spend a pick at like, I think right now he's going in the 60s. Yeah, I don't want to spend pick 59.5 on RJ Harvey. I'd actually rather take Dobbins, who's going lower than he did last year. I'd rather take Dobbins.
Yeah. I mean, RJ Harvey has he has the reception upside that Dobbins doesn't necessarily have, but Dobbins is he projects as like a guy that can get you 80 yards and a touchdown pretty consistently.
Yep. The Lions didn't have that many changes. They signed Isaiah Pacheco, so David Montgomery being traded obviously opens up a lot of things for Jahmyr Gibbs. I know this is your favorite team and you probably want to go in deep with it, but we don't really need
I don't even want to go deep on it. I think it is Jahmyr Gibbs was the number 1. David Montgomery didn't get the workload he wanted. They sent David Montgomery to a place where he can get the workload he wants while still giving Jahmyr Gibbs the workload that he had last year.
Yeah, and so they signed Isaiah Pacheco, I believe, today or yesterday. And this is basically just a fallback option. Like you need somebody that can spell the main guy, and you need someone that can be reliable to step in if Jahmyr Gibbs gets injured. People don't like going into the season with like, they don't want Baki to be like the number 2 running back, which makes a lot of sense.
Pacheco's a good downhill runner. That's what the Lions want. Jahmyr Gibbs plays downhill. David Montgomery played downhill. I think Pacheco offers like a different changeup, but somewhat similar to David Montgomery, but like he's got more speed. He's got a little bit more long speed, and he's got a little bit more acceleration that David Montgomery has, which I think plays to the Lions offense a little bit better because it's not as much of a stylistic change between how Jahmyr Gibbs and how Isaiah Pacheco hit the hole. So I think that part is interesting, but like he's going to be nothing more than like a short yardage guy, change of pace guy. It's not nothing groundbreaking. It's really just like, yeah, Jahmyr Gibbs is our number 1. And they're saying Jahmyr Gibbs is our number 1. And we want to be able to give him the workload that he got without feeling bad for the guy that we paid $6 million a year to. So
division rival, Green Bay Packers, another team. They didn't acquire anybody themselves, but they did lose Romeo Doubs. And I think that's pretty interesting because I think we're going to agree on this. I think Romeo Doubs pretty underrated and how good he might actually be. The Packers are pretty famously like a team that likes to rotate receivers in different roles, and it just like compresses everybody's numbers at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But I think that he was a pretty good receiver. And the impact is that, okay, now we still have other good receivers on the team, and we need to find roles for all of them. We don't want to completely give up on Matthew Golden. There's a kind of a spot now for him to be in the rotation.
Yeah.
Jaden Reed will probably stay in his slot role. Christian Watson's back from injury. What are you thinking in terms of this team?
Yeah, I think it's, like you said, it's sliding Golden into a full-time role as an outside receiver to kind of filling the spot of Doubs. I'm a Doubs truther, personally. I really like him. I really like his game. But, yeah, I think it was kind of another, like, somewhat similar to the Bears. Not, obviously they didn't trade Doubs, but in the sense that, like, they have a plethora of receivers. Doubs was going to be asking for a bigger contract. They have a rookie running back or coming off of his rookie year, first round running back or wide receiver. So it's like, yeah, they need to get him into a full-time role. They have Christian Watson fully healthy. They'll have Jaden Reed fully healthy. That was always kind of the iteration of what that receiving core was supposed to look like anyway. And it'll be interesting to see how that plays out as far as red zone, because Doubs was such a big red zone threat for the Packers and was so reliable in that area. That opens up and just interesting of like how Jordan Love liked to operate in the red zone. He would, Doubs could win short area slants. He could be physical. He could win jump ball situations. Matthew Golden's not really that guy. Christian Watts is really not that guy. So like that changes the complexion of their red zone offense a little bit. But overall, I think that, this was just like they have a first round receiver that they need to get in and like find out fully what he is. Matthew Golden showed some serious flashes and like as a separator last year and as an intermediate deep threat, but can he become this well-rounded, 80% route share type of guy that he should be in that offense?
Yeah, I still think they're going to probably have a rotation. They still have Wicks. They've shown some willingness to want to put in like even deeper on the depth chart, like Savion Williams, rookie from last year. And I feel like the Packers always draft like a receiver in the 3rd, 4th round just every year. It's like part of their strategy or something to just having like the cupboard full.
Yeah, right.
And which is not a bad strategy. Receivers cost a lot of money. It's great that they were able to withstand losing a guy like Romeo Doubs and just having like, 3 other guys that they can rely on anyway. Yeah. I think that the Matthew Golden role might still not be like exactly where most people want it to be, where it's like, hey, this guy's a 1st round pick. So yeah, he should be playing like 80% of the routes or more. Like, I don't know that you're going to get that from him. I don't even know if you'll get that from Watson, only because they might be trying to manage his like hamstring injuries and all that kind of stuff that he always seems to have, soft tissue stuff. So I'm not like super bullish on Golden like long term, but right now his ADP is kind of in this like 124 range. And to me, like there's at least like some room for upside there. He is a former 1st round pick. Like, do I think that he's going to run 80% of the routes? No, but could he run 70% of the routes? Yes. Does his profile lend itself to somebody that could have like some spikes because he does a lot of like the deep game stuff? Yes. Did he separate decently well at times last year? Yes. So I think there's some boxes that he checks and then there's some boxes that he doesn't. And I'm at least willing to give him like, a little bit of a free pass from last year. It seemed like his timing was off with Jordan Love too. Maybe there was, for me, like there was a ton of clips when I was watching the film, like this guy is wide open. He is being overshot or undershot or whatever it is. So I'm basically trying to say, like, I think that there's some value with his ADP. I'm not like a Matthew Golden lover by any means. It's just when you're looking at players in the 120s, you're looking at guys like Golden versus like Denzel Boston versus Josh Downs and Jalen McMillan types of players. And I would rather have Matthew Golden than some of those guys at the moment.
So, listen, I'm taking Jalen McMillan over all of them. But that's a story. That's a story for another day. But I do like Matthew Golden as an upside shot, like later in drafts. I think that with how far down he is, I think he's a solid upside shot of if he is able to figure out that timing, if that separation continues to go and he's able to work a little bit more over the middle and in the short area that he never really was asked. He was really not asked to do at all last year. Most of what he was doing was field stretching. As that integrates more into his game, just out of pure necessity of him playing more often, I think it could be a slow burn. One of those where he gets drafted, he does nothing next to nothing with maybe a pop of a game within the first 6 weeks, but then you start to see a little bit more consistency towards middle back half of the year. If anything, this is a testament to that Tucker Kraft's touchdown upside is massive in this offense right now as a red zone threat. Tucker Kraft, I think his upside as a fantasy player just went up quite a bit with Doubs leaving, just because he's the one big guy that could win in a contested catch short area situation that Doubs was kind of competing with him against. That's now gone. So it really kind of does funnel a little bit more towards Tucker Kraft.
All right. Moving on from the Packers, we've got the Texans. They added David Montgomery through trade. Not much else.
They added Braden Smith, which shores up the offensive line a little bit. They
Fair,
obviously
fair,
have their
yeah.
issues, but they've got two decent stalwarts at tackle, which hopefully helps elevate that offensive line a little bit. Bring in Braden Smith, having Laramie Tunsil on the other side. Like, that's one of the better tackle duos in the league. So, like, that part of it is interesting for just the upside of CJ Stroud being kept clean off the edges a little bit better. David Montgomery, I think, steps right into a role that, you know, he's probably, they have Woody Marks there. It's probably, you know, a split between the two, with, I think, David Montgomery kind of being the 1A. And he's shown with a big workload in all the years that he's had solid workloads, he's pretty much delivered, whether it was in Chicago or, you know, his first couple of years in Detroit. I like David. I want to see what happens with that interior offensive line, just because of so much of what David Montgomery does well is in between the tackles. I like David Montgomery within that offense because it gives them like the best legitimate rushing threat they've had since Joe Mixon, which, when Joe Mixon was there, changed that offense and like changed the effectiveness of that offense, and hopefully keep CJ Stroud a little bit more clean, because David Montgomery is also solid in pass pro. So like he can be a 3-down back for them if they need him to be. He's got a little bit of receiving upside. So like, I think he raises the ceiling of the offense. And I think that he works well in a full-time role and he stays healthy.
I think he'll be good for them from a lead back perspective, just because like we saw almost every single game last year.
Yeah.
At least a quarter or something like that.
Yeah.
When I think of David Montgomery, I think of like a very like consummate pro. Like, this guy is reliable. He will do the right thing. He's going to like hit the hole. He's going to find the hole too.
Yeah.
You can count on like a 4 to 5 yard gain, like pretty consistently.
Yeah.
And I think he was kind of famously like the missed tackle force guy that couldn't get yards after contact, which was a weird mix, but he kind of fixed that when he got to Detroit a little bit more.
Yeah.
I think he's got a lot of opportunity, given the fact that they're kind of fixing their offensive line a little bit. I'm not like super into the offense by any means. I still think this is not going to be like a really, really strong offense, but it's one thing that I always think about with this team is that I think they want to be a run first team. And so they're going like around the goal line. I think they're going to just kind of hand it to him and let him score touchdowns. So I think he has a lot of touchdown upside, and he can catch out of the backfield. They'll probably have Woody Marks in some of that role too, but I just think he's probably going to be like the 60-40 of him versus Woody Marks. And like, I think they'll trust him on the goal line. So I think this is a really good role for him. His ADP right now, I think I said this earlier, he's going in like the 73 kind of ish pocket, right above Jalen Warren, Ramondre Stevenson, Chuba, guys like that. Feels about right to me. Like, maybe he could probably outperform that with like touchdown luck, but yeah, he's like a solid guy you can rely on in fantasy, with being like your in a zero running back, like first running back, second running back, something like that. I think it's fine. Then Woody Marks is actually going pretty late. He's going 146 ish right now. And I think we're kind of just giving up and saying like, oh, this is David Montgomery and he's good, which is exactly what I just said. But when these veterans move situations, there's always some inherent risk. Like, what if it just doesn't work out? Like, what if he's not the same person anymore? Or maybe like the scheme in Detroit was really propping him up or something like that. Even though we don't think those things, I always like to think about like the opposite situation.
Yeah.
And like, if we're discrediting Woody Marks because of the offensive line and all of that kind of stuff, like maybe we should also be discrediting what happens to Montgomery in that situation. So I like him as like a handcuff in the 145 range, because I know that he can catch passes out of the backfield. We've seen him in a big role. They've given him the big role before. So if Montgomery went down, we know that he would basically be the handcuff and take on like a lot of the work too. And I think there's nice upside in taking a situation like that. I don't think there's anything else really from a Texans angle. The Colts had a couple of big things. A lot of it is, how do things stay the same, and a few things are like, how do things change? So one, I think this is like something to talk about all together, but one, bringing back Daniel Jones coming off of a big injury at the end of the season. Alec Pierce, another big thing, giving him a big contract shows you what they feel about him. And then 3, trading Michael Pittman. So now I think there's one, how does the offense flow in general? Are they going to still be, scoring at the levels they did last year? All sorts of stuff like that when Daniel Jones was healthy. Then there's like, what does the wide receiver rotation look like? Does Alec Pierce play a slightly different role than he did in the past? And then how does this impact like even the target share that you see amongst the rest of the receivers in the room? I'm going to let you handle some of that. We can kind of like give both of our thoughts, but I'm curious what you're thinking from an offensive angle right now.
I think the biggest thing is that this is like pushing all their chips in on Alec Pierce developing into a number 1. What's crazy is like Alec Pierce had 80 plus targets last year. He eclipsed 1,000 yards. He did that with an 8 out of 19, and he did that with 15 targets under 10 yards. Targets with a depth of target under 10 yards, he had 15 targets, which is like the lowest number for any wide receiver. If you look at, wide receivers that ran 150 more routes and had, 50 plus targets. If you look at receivers that, had like super high ADOTs, like all of it is that he has never been used in the short area. That was never his game. And I think this is saying like, would they think that he can win in that area? 1, and 2, they have guys that can win in that area to fill that spot that Michael Pittman was occupying, which so much of what Michael Pittman was doing was short area, static routes, slant routes, a little bit over the middle, just like that type of work. I think that now all gets pushed more to Tyler Warren, more to Josh Downs, and they're going to ask Alec Pierce to hopefully be 100+ target guy. And so I love the upside of Alec Pierce. I think it really comes down to can Daniel Jones come back and be the same quarterback that he was during that stretch where they were obviously operating really hot and the offense was moving well? Because the connection that he and Alec Pierce had on downfield throws was really one of the best in the NFL last year. I mean, Alec Pierce has an innate ability to box out and go up and get the ball. He's a burner. He can win downfield. He's good at like deep in cuts, deep post cuts, things like that. He understands how to set up corners. Can he operate more in the short field? And can he be a guy that, operates with 115, 120 targets in a season, which I think he can. If anything, the ability to win in slants and things like that being introduced into his game, I think only helps him than it does hurt him, because now you're forcing corners to respect that area of the field where, last year and in previous years with Alec Pierce, where his ADOT has consistently been like 19, 20 plus, corners are able to play a little bit more conservative. They know that he's a deep guy, so they're gonna bail faster. They're gonna be prepared to not get beat over the top, and they're gonna try to keep things in front of him. If he can develop that short area target, that really will, I think, increase his game so much.
I'm worried that they don't put him in that role, and we have no way of knowing that they're going to do that or not, other than the fact that they got rid of Pittman. And my worry is that they use Warren in that like possession receiver type of role. We have a long history of Steichen with Josh Downs, and they just seem to not play him as an outside receiver like very often. No, and I know they have nobody else, but does that mean like they're just gonna find some like guy to plug in there, whether that's through draft and like, or if they just find like a older veteran receiver that they plug into to an outside role or something like that. So I like the way that I was thinking through this is, I think it makes Alec Pierce's upside higher because obviously like he could play a different role. Then I think that Tyler Warren's just like an obvious, like this guy is going to do a shit ton of stuff for the team.
Yeah.
Like, he's gonna smash in fantasy too. I think his ADP was very close to where Fannin's was as well. Actually, let me look at that. Yeah, it was 70.7 and Fannin was 78.7. I think he's like a clear, like, this guy's gonna crush, in my opinion.
I agree.
And then Josh Downs, I'm like, I just don't even know. Like, I don't know how much he's gonna play, even though I think he's pretty good. I just don't know if he's gonna be on the field when they're not in 11 personnel.
Probably not. It probably does signal to them potentially drafting a receiver, not necessarily, like, probably going like a mid-round receiver. And just because I think this draft of receivers is so deep in different archetypes, talent-wise, it's a pretty deep. You can get any pick of the litter of like what flavor of receiver you want. You can kind of find in this draft. So I think getting rid of Pittman, you could get a guy that can fill Pittman's role to a lesser degree. You're not, obviously Pittman's had a lot of experience. He's a good NFL receiver, but I think that like now, yeah, it does open the door for them to go get a rookie receiver, run some, potentially multiple tight end stuff. Like maybe this makes like Will Mallory coming in and like getting him more playing time. He's athletic and he can move well. So like that opens up the door for him to be more involved.
Wouldn't it be awesome if they still had AD Mitchell?
I think that I would wager that they probably go with a receiver that has some day one upside, or not like day one upside, but like getting on the field on day one, who's not necessarily kind of like a Surratt or an Omar Cooper, like a guy that isn't going to be, a bona fide stud, but he's a solid player that they can get on the field right away because they know what they're doing. It's not like a super big upside play. So like, yeah. But yeah, I understand the concern with Josh Downs because I feel the same way. I think they know exactly what they have in him, and that's just like he's an underneath 11 personnel manufactured target guy who's got some yak and can surprise you, over the middle of the field every once in a while.
They've shown a willingness to do a lot of like 12 and 13 personnel too, with like Mo Ali, like even just leaving those guys in to block or just leak out at the end of plays or something. And so I'm still not certain about his like route share. So I'm personally not that into him. I think he's a good player, but for some reason they don't really want him on the field.
But I think the upside for Tyler Warren and the upside for Alec Pierce are like through the roof in this offense. As long as Daniel Jones can come back decently healthy, and as long as if they can get Alec Pierce to just be 120 targets, I think Alec Pierce can crush. I think Tyler Warren can also crush and just fill in that like intermediate middle of the field spot route, static route type guy that Jones leans on, under 10 yards.
Okay. Last one before we break it up into our second part.
I know we had to go way longer than I thought, but it's good. I think it's
this is a big one, kind of. I don't want to spend like so much time on it because it's like a big topic of conversation on Twitter for everybody, because everybody like has an opinion about Bhayshul Tuten. And so the Jaguars signed Chris Rodriguez. Bhayshul Tuten's obviously still on the team. The contract for Chris Rodriguez is basically like a guarantee of $6.2 million with an AAV of $5 million. Ryan Heath had a tweet about this. It's like a very small cap percentage, comparative to like previous deals. $5 million sounds like a lot, but it's not as much as we think it is these days. I have my own opinion, and I think a lot of people know how I've felt about Bhayshul Tuten, but I want to hear yours, and then I will give mine.
I like Bhayshul Tuten, but I'm not like one of these people that thinks that like, and here we go, the train is on the tracks and it's off and running and he's going to take off. I think he was useful in small roles and he showed some pop, but I also don't think Jacksonville was ever going to commit long-term to ETN. And I think that the fact that ETN was able to stranglehold as much of a work share as he did in that offense shows you how much like total upside Tuten has. I think he can continue to develop, but like I don't think he's like this dark horse potential like top 10 running back that I think that like some people are starting to kind of jump onto with him. I think like I'm more of like, especially with running backs, I'm more of a like look at what the coaching staff is saying about them and look at how he's using them. If he was as good in like a full-time role as you would want him to be, I think he would have gotten more playing time last year.
That's me, Paul Reed. I love Paul Reed.
And then you start pulling up the per 36 numbers where you're like, oh my gosh. Like if you look at his per 36 numbers, he's averaging 27, 15, 4 blocks. Like, look at this upside. And then the guy never plays 36 minutes because he's just not a starter. He's just not a starter level guy. And I think that's kind of what you have with Tuten too, is that like he's going to give you good carries. He's going to show some pop. And I think he's worthy of getting like a 40%, 45% carry share. But I don't think he's going to be this guy that's going to go to like a 60, 65%, 60+% carry share. I think LaQuinn Allen is decent, and I think Chris Rodriguez is decent. I think that's they have archetypes of guys that can do different things. They're going to deploy it that way. I think that's what Liam Cohen did when he was in Tampa, and Bucky Irving ended up popping off and becoming more than what I think a lot of people thought he was going to be. So that is kind of my testament to like why I don't think Tuten is.
It's not like he was getting such a big opportunity, but it wasn't necessarily that. Like there was always going to be a Rachaad White role, which is like a LaQuinn Allen type of role.
Yep.
And then there was a Sean Tucker role, which might be a Chris Rodriguez type of role, where it's like this guy can do fun stuff in like short yardage and not too.
And it's probably like I think Chris Rodriguez probably gets a little bit like. He is a level above Sean Tucker, so he's going to get a bigger role than what Sean Tucker had in that offense. But I like kind of think you can look at it from that sense of like, hey, when Liam Cohen had a rookie that was like really starting to pop off and show a lot of like legit game breaking abilities, so to say, like he used him more, and he didn't use Tuten as often as like people wanted him to. I hope Tuten develops, and I hope he like takes a step forward this year because I think he can be a good player, but I'm not ready to commit to him as being like, oh my gosh, he's going to take over the Jacksonville backfield.
So I'm a big numbers guy, and I think the numbers look decent for Tuten too, but I like watched every single run multiple times from different angles.
Yeah.
And I watched ETN's runs multiple times from different angles. And my perspective was that I thought Bhayshul Tuten had really, really strong vision on zone blocking scheme runs. Like I thought that he would constantly find the hole that he was supposed to find. I didn't think that the metrics don't play out the same way, because if you cut them in different ways, you could kind of tell the story that you want.
Yeah.
I think Tuten's actually, I like the fact that he played their goal line role last year. And I thought he did pretty well. Like his success rate on goal line plays, on short yardage plays was really, really high. I think it was one of the highest in the NFL.
Which is a testament to his vision.
Like the athletic profile is like obviously what gets everyone super excited, because I think our fantasy points like Spork metric, he like breaks the numbers. He's like 100 or whatever out of, I think maybe Mike Washington would be close to that right now.
Yeah.
I thought that he like showed all of that burst on tape too. It's not just like some combine metrics and stuff too. He didn't have like the explosive plays, which kind of negates some of the thought process. Like it took till like week, like 15 or something for him to get a carry over 10 yards. But I still think he has like really strong potential. And the way that I'm thinking about this is, okay, let's say that it is like a Bucky Irving split. You're not paying Bucky Irving prices right now because he didn't do it yet, right?
Yep.
Bucky did do it, and so you would pay the Bucky price. So the price for Bhayshul Tuten, which I think is going up by the day just because they didn't sign anybody.
Yeah.
So that's like, it's above DeAndre Swift and David Montgomery, below Judkins, which is a little surprising, below RJ Harvey. I think he'll flip RJ Harvey pretty soon. And I think this is like the right range, the way that I'm kind of like playing out in my head. Like, even if you think that Rodriguez is going to have like a pretty significant role, more than what a Rachaad White role, or sorry, more than what a Sean Tucker role is, I still think Bhayshul Tuten's like the one. He's the one, and Rodriguez is the two, but like more of a two than what typical twos are. So it's like maybe like a 65-35 split with rushing on the rushing side. And then Tuten will probably get some passing down work. I don't think Rodriguez will get much passing down work. And LaQuint Allen will be like in on like most passing downs that are obvious, right?
Yeah.
And if I break down those numbers in my head, I'm thinking it's like a 800 to 900 yard rushing, like 8 touchdown kind of like situation in this offense. And I think that's okay from a median perspective at this pick, because you're like, the people that are left after this are like Allgeier, Tony Pollard, guys like that who you're just like not even sure what their role might be. So I feel like it's an okay spot for him. And then the upside is, what if he is actually really good?
Yeah. And
he starts breaking and his efficiency is incredible and all this stuff. Like, I think baseline is 800. And then like, let's just say that Rodriguez doesn't work out for some reason, or we got the numbers wrong. It's not 65-35. It's like 80-20 rushing. Then he's going to break fantasy. So I'm like very much in for this specific price. If he gets to like a 4th round price tag, like that's way too high in my opinion. But right now I'm like, yeah, I think it's the fair price that you should pay for him. And then there's more upside for him as well. So that's where I stand on it.
Yeah. And this, I mean, with his vision, I will say, like, it's a great offense to be in. If he can continue displaying his, like, that good vision, like, over large amounts of carries, and that's, like, who he is, which he probably is, this is one of the best offenses to be in. It's one of the best, like, offensive minds to be with. Liam Cohen has shown to be a very creative, very smart run game designer. And so I think, like, the upside is there because of that, being able to operate with an offensive mind that can get the type of production that he got out of like a Bucky Irving and Rashad White and Sean Tucker bodes well for him if he can capture a big amount or a large amount of the workload. I just don't know if I'm ready to commit to it yet, just because I don't know. I think that I would have liked to have seen him grab more of the workload last year.
Yeah, I understand the hesitancy. I thought that they were like starting to do it one game. I'm trying to remember.
I know what game you're talking about. And then he got hurt
in that game.
Yeah, I wanted I almost want to say it was against like the Bills or something, but
no, it was a game that they were like they ended up like crushing, and I just can't remember who it was anymore. But yeah, they did it one game. They were splitting him more evenly, and then he gets hurt, and then ETN like basically just takes on for the rest of the season, and that's pretty much what ended up happening.
Yeah,
but I'm in on his current price. I think there's opportunity for more upside for him. There's obviously opportunity for downside too. Like I keep talking about like 65-35, and what if Rodriguez is better than him or more reliable for like just early down stuff or whatever, and they're okay with foregoing explosiveness. That's also a possibility, but I'm kind of in on him. And
yeah, it was the Chargers. He went 15 carries, 74 yards, and a touchdown against the Chargers last year.
We went like an hour and 40 minutes through this whole thing, but we did the first part. We're going to do the second part pretty soon. But Steve, it was good talking to you again. Good to get your perspective on everybody. I know there's a lot of changes going on in the NFL, and I'm excited for the second half of this.
Yeah, it's good to be back. It's good to chop it up with you again and start to ramp up into our brand new year of the 2026 NFL season. This is like, obviously the NFL season is fun, but like the off season's a ton of fun just because of how much you can speculate, because you just get to throw out wild theories, work it all off of paper, and create hot takes and everything galore just off of a couple moves. So it's fun.
Yeah. You guys know the drill. Follow us. You see our Twitter handles on here. It's at Zain, at Dhanani Zain, at call me Steve07. Like, subscribe, all the fun stuff. We'll talk to you guys soon.